Good morning, everyone. David Cross here with you today, and I'm going to go over some development efforts I ran over the weekend. Some of you may have seen our product manager, Tim Rooney, and his MCP server, which he's using Agentic AI to perform some basic API calls and letting the AI agent or MCP client determine which tool that's been defined within this MCP server, which is the model context protocol, is what that means, and allows us to take that MCP and interface it with the AI and LLM that can then use it to determine which tool to use based on the LLM's decision making, call that tool, perform the function, and return the result. So there's a couple of parts of this. The first is the MCP server. Now I used Cursor on my Linux system to go out and open a new folder, prompt it with the MCP server framework that we were going to build. I also fed it things like the software development kit that we use for Python to use for the actual structure. And then we also needed to go through some explanations of what some of these exports and APIs do. And then I even went through a couple processes, which I'll show you, which are multi-step functions like I want you to calculate um, 10 subnets or allocate 10 subnets in this container using this type and user-defined fields and other sections, and it would go out, loop through it, build that subnet or IP addresses or whatever it was, and feed it back. Same thing with modifications. If I wanted to change a DHCP option, change the server or some other setting, I could do this through AI and do it through a simple task, but it would use that task in a series of sequences that I've already programmed, and that's what the MCP server does. So no matter what anybody says, the MCP server is a development server. You have to prompt it, you have to create the APIs, the endpoints, the tools, and it's better that you actually do it in a way that you can use keywords and aliases, which is what Cursor did, so that those words as they're coming in the prompt can be tokenized, they can be translated or mapped to another term that's more appropriate to the DDI and others. So the second thing that I did is I installed an AI agent into a Node-RED, and I'm using Node-RED 5 because I want to see what the new one is. But I haven't tested this on the CAA server, but externally it does work in Node. And there is an AI agent available that allows us to plug into effectively the older, smaller engines that are out there. I haven't figured out how to get this to work with GPT-5.5 or Claude or anything else. So this is something that needs to be looked at because the max tokens and the max prompt tokens are far less than what we need in a true DDI agentic AI system. I mean, it has to be capable of managing tens, hundreds, thousands of records and return results and not cut off based on the tokens. And that's what I'm experiencing now. I'm getting most of the data, some of the data, but only to a certain point that the maximum tokens can be read. And that is apparently where I'm at right now. But in terms of the agent, it was very simple. It is just a matter of setting this up. Now I have a AI account, OpenAI account, but this does allow you to use other MCP servers and you can plug those in. I'm pointing to my local system, which is here, but there are others that you can use further. But this MCP is programmed already with the DDI. So also in this agent, as part of this prompting, Cursor said you need to really put this into the agent system so that when it prompts it, it knows how to do certain redirections, what kind of cleanup, what to use, what not to use, and some of the controls and so forth. Things that are forbidden, checks, balances, also approvals. Those are things that are going to be required in this as we go through it. So in my AI, very quick, I also had Cursor program a agent response that I could go out and change this to a table or JSON or to other functions, CSV even, and put that into the prompt and output it. So this is a real simple AI configuration here. Now in terms of the client, it's pretty straightforward, but it's pretty advanced as well. It runs on mobile, runs clean. I've got a nice guide that kind of gives you a short version of what this does and then a full version that you can open up and kind of walk through and see examples. How do I prompt the system? What do I do if I want to, run these commands? There's also a full prompt that you can see at the end of this document, and also some SDK inventory, the functions we're using, and how many methods and so forth are within those functions. And so this particular help page is great, helped along the way. And then what it also did for me is it created a couple of pin templates, things that I was doing frequently, like site, add a site, a clean up a site, meaning it goes out and it creates a container using the clone container. It runs the add site template, which builds out the subnets and then allows you to see that data or clean it up. So then reverse, delete the subnets, clean that data up. And then down on the discovery tools is where I had it put in most of the functions. So we have, I wouldn't say even probably close to a quarter of all of the APIs available, but they are specific. So we have things like exporting subnets, networks by tags, DNS domains, views, the critical components, DNS resource record lookup, option, dictionaries, and then workflows. So building and adding and deleting, and then also the ability to like loop through and add, delete uh, things through prompt as well. So the first thing is, I'm kind of looking at the tools here. If we just want to kind of see it run, I can say use this prompt or run this prompt, and it'll go ahead and throw it into the text and then generate that information. Now on my node red, you'll see over here it's thinking about the information, and then it came back and said, well, here's your list, here's your tools. Now this isn't quite extensible enough because it only gives me so much data back. So there are ways that you can expand this a little bit to get more detail from it and break that information out. Now, some of the other things that we have here, like exporting subnets in a container. So I have a subnet out here. It's going to go ahead and run, export these output to a table. And this output to a table is the function node that we're seeing here that's allowing us to do this. Otherwise, it takes it as markdown, passes the data back to us. So those are pretty good. They're easy to do. Let's take a look at one of these other ones here. So like DHCP option searches. I had one here this morning that I ran. There shouldn't be any option sets out here with 44, but okay, there is one out there. So what we could do then is add to this, and we could say, find this, modify the value to 192.168.1.41, and import the option set to modify the value. Okay, we're just going to run that. Now, what this should do for me, and one of the safety parts of this application that it built is it requires approval whenever it does an add or delete, constructive or destructive. So it should come up and tell me, hey, your plan is here. I did the look, I found the values, I see where I can do this, but now I need you to put this into the prompt. So what my tool is going to do with this is then say, I'm going to approve by, and I'm just going to say David Cross, and approval ID DC1234. Now let's send that. And this should then give us an update and tell us, okay, I've got it. I've got the approval. I'm going to do the update. And now the server option will be changed. And this is what we should see in the result, effectively telling us that option. And then over in the debug side of the house, we should be able to see all of the options that are running, all of the variables. This should show us basically the agent log, all of the commands it ran to do this and the debugging, and then the results of this information showing us basically what it posted, and but you'll see here it's cut off because of the string size. So we do have enough of this that we can go in and see the data, see what the options were, see the values, and specifically the value, what we're going to update on this, and do it all through a single prompt. So that's pretty cool. Now we could extend that and we could say we need to go out and find 20 of these subnet level option sets where the DNS server is going to change where a value is, and we could go in and tell it to go in and update that, pull out the other values, change just that value, and do the same. So that's kind of where we want to go with this agentic and handling all of these through just normal text. This is what my intention is, and this is what I want to do, and therefore that's how it's done. So let's do the same thing with the site here. So I want to build a new site. Let's call this MCP2 1234. I'm going to build it under the demo site. I'm going to clone this demo 01. I'm going to use this template site, and this is going to say do not execute, just build the plan. And again, it's going to show us what we have here, tell us what we need to do, and then we're going to tell it we can execute it. Okay. So if we need to proceed, approval is required. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to change this from, so we'll say confirm execute, approve by David Cross again. And let's see if it'll accept this and confirm the execute. And you can see it kind of running in the MCP. I use this for debugging. I've got it turned on now through variable, so we can enable that to start up, shut down, etc. A few more things I need to do with this MCP server, like starting in the background and such, but aside from that, that should be fine. And you'll see here now that it created the site, and I should be able to go out to that now. Probably have to refresh here. Let's see. Okay, well, there you go. So there's our site. There are our subnets. And this gave us just a real quick, introduction to that process. Now, I also have in here a cleanup plan. So we could go back out and say that we're going to do a site cleanup. I can tell it to use this, and we're going to tell it to delete test MCP-1234. And let's go ahead and run this plan first, and let's verify it knows what it's going to do. And it should tell us what that is. All right, so here you go. And this is telling us what we're going to do. So then we're going to go ahead and do confirm execute again, and we have to approve it. And let's see what this will do for us now. And what we kind of hope it will do is loop through all the subnets, get all of those output, delete the subnets like we see that it's doing up here, and then very last subnet after the delete should go in and clean up the container for us. So we've shown before, adding these sites, we do that through the containers, we do it through a couple APIs, works really well. But now through Agentic, we've got all of that done, and we can do all of this just through a single command, even a prompt. And you'll see it's cleaned up everything necessary, moved the subnets, and approved by. This will also keep history. So we can see all of the history of this information. These sections are collapsible as well, so we can see the recent prompts. And I can save these and export all of this information out so that I can save it and reuse it or prompt it or provide a document for it. So this is where I'm going. I have maybe, I don't know, 40, 50% of the APIs, and I'm kind of going through these and trying to add this back to it, but there are lessons learned in this. I have found you cannot just simply add an API to an agentic AI and expect it knows what it's going to do. So when I went through this and I would say, I want to do this, I want to do, add a subnet, add a container, build the site template, all of that information, I had to prompt that. I had to instruct it what to do when it saw that type of word structure or sentence and to break that apart and tell it what to do. And I built helpers out of this. So Cursor was smart enough that we would say, okay, now build a helper. I want to go out and I want to calculate some things and then tell it to go and do some automatic functions. So one of those that we did, and it's the same thing, we can go out and take a look at uh, some of these prompts here. Let's take a look at the quick selections. And some of these would be like math. So I could go out and say calculate an IP address from and then do a bulk device update or import a number of subnets based on the next available loop. So let's go ahead and use this. And this is kind of like that prompt. So plan allocating the next 5 in the subnet. And we're going to change this to 9 with block type data. Block status deployed, user defined fields. Let's just make this 1001 to make a difference. Default gateway, we're not going to put in there because it's not correct for this. And then our primary DHCP server, and I'm just going to leave these out for a minute. But let's go ahead and add the 4 domains. Now I have these in an array structure, and I have explained to Cursor that we're not going to do that. We're not going to force the users to do an array. And so we can just tell it that we want to do VLAN ID equals 1001, 4 domains, dev priv, which is my domain here. And let's see what this does. So this should be able to fill out these values. When it sees 4 domains, it knows an array, VLAN ID, and knows a user-defined field, and it's just the 1 there. So now we can go ahead and say execute allocating. Let's do confirm execute, allocating the next 5 subnets. And we have to do our approval. Approved by. And let's see what happens here. Some of these, it does get confused sometimes. It may give an error back. It may say, I can't do this, and you may try again. And it'll work again. So like this here, it gave us a fault. It says it didn't understand how to do that. So I'll have to come back and figure this one out again and go through it. But, just as an example, it tried to do something here, it tried to do something different, but that's not what we wanted it to do. So some of these things you'll see here. Some run, some don't. They may run again if you run it, one more time, but it looks like I need to go and debug this a little, as an example of that. Now let's go up and see what else we've got here. Uh, Container hierarchy, getting containers by name, getting UDF by tag, getting deployed blocks, these are there here as well as a get allocation candidates. So this type of information is also useful. And you'll see here, now the second time I did it, it says I need to confirm these. So let's do this again. Let's do confirmed, execute allocating. Let's try it again. And so that's what I'm saying. Sometimes that agent gets confused. You may have to run it again. It may try to find something else. But this is also where all of this programming comes in, and this is where the developers of the MCP need to put in this ability to tell the agent exactly what you want to do so there's no ambiguity. I'm not telling this to go out and just do anything anywhere randomly. I want a very structured, it must do this. If it can't do this, it must fail, and it must tell me why. Or if I want to delete something in a loop, I must approve it. It's only going to give me a plan otherwise. And so that was the idea. And then I put in, obviously, because I do a lot of IP math functions, some capabilities that you can do this as well. So if I wanted to do split subnets, I could pull this up. Here's this, split it into that, and output to 22, and it should give me the ability to, calculate that math and provide the details. So some of this even just for, give me the summary. I've got a network. I want to see what the summary looks like. That type of thing. That's what this is going to do for you. Just say, get network summary of this block. And let's do that real quick. Just IPv4 summarize. Let's just run what the example is and see what this comes out and says. Yeah, these cannot be summarized. They remain as individual 24 blocks. So that was trying to summarize it into a aggregate, and it says it's not on a boundary, can't do it. So we would have to go to a different subnet level or make this a 22 or add another subnet to make that on a boundary. So there you go. So that's some of the tools. There's some of the things I did over the weekend. Looks really good so far. I think that we could build this, make it easier. Most definitely has to be locked down. So anybody doing programming with this, remember, you have to be very, very explicit in what you're trying to do. This isn't just I'm going to throw a bunch of APIs at it and it's going to actually magically figure it out. That isn't how AI works. And I don't know how anybody's been, spreading this word. The thing is going to replace people. I see very little reasoning to do that here. I've had to prompt this many, many times over and correct it many times to get these right, and that's the challenge. So that's where we're going to try to do this. I know Tim is going to use his MCP. I'm just kind of building on this to get familiar with it and understanding. But we may combine some efforts here, and then you'll see something more firm and supported through the product. But anyway, thanks for joining me this morning. Appreciate the 18 minutes of time, and hopefully give me a call or ring or send me an email if you're interested in learning more about this. And have a great day. Talk to you soon.